big round of applause for Boris Timanovsky.
When my son Joseph was 4 months old, my mom called one Friday evening and she said that Aunt Lily was coming over tomorrow to see the baby. And I knew that my wife Elena would say that we've been having too many visitors recently and that instead of getting rest, she'll have to entertain my relatives again. And that she feels like she's under a siege by my family with the never-ending visits and the phone calls and the inspections and the interrogations. And what am I going to do about that? And when am I going to stand up to my family and start shielding her? And while we're on the subject, when am I going to start coming home from work sooner? When am I going to start getting up at night when the baby is crying? And I tell my mom, you sure this is a good idea? Didn't they just say on the Russian TV that there is an outbreak of something very contagious in exactly that part of New Jersey where Aunt Lily lives? And my mom says, I thought you said you don't watch the Russian TV. And she also said that Aunt Lily lives in Long Island, not in New Jersey. So I tell Elena that we have a visitor tomorrow, and she says all these things that I knew she'd say. And I tell her, you're right. I am going to start getting up at night when the baby is crying, and I am going to start shielding you from my family starting tomorrow. And I wake up tomorrow morning, and I'm thinking, good, the baby slept well through the night, didn't cry at all. And then Elena tells me that it was I who slept through the night, and that she had to get up at least 3 times. So I'm thinking, okay, I'll do a better job shielding her, as I promised. And every time the phone rang that morning, I picked up the phone and I said, no, Mom, we'll clean the apartment ourselves before Aunt Lily comes. You don't have to come over and clean it. And no, Grandma, we have enough food for Aunt Lily's visit. You don't have to get on the bus and come over and bring us food. And what kind of food we got? We got all kinds of food. We even have caviar. And then I miss one phone call. and Elena has to answer it. And it's Grandma calling to ask the follow-up question of what color caviar, red or black. And that completely nullifies all the shielding I was doing. So Aunt Lily comes over, and the first thing she does, she announces that her grandson, Misha, who had just driven her from Long Island, had first taken her to her Brooklyn dentist, and that the new dentures she got there don't feel very comfortable, so she's not going to eat anything. So, good, I guess I don't have to open the caviar after all. And Elena brings in the baby from the bedroom, and she puts him down on the sofa. And Aunt Lily sees the baby, and she bends over, and she lifts up his shirt, and she starts blowing air on his tummy. And Joseph is giggling, and Aunt Lily is making all kinds of funny sounds, and Elena is rolling her eyes, because there is no way anyone on her side of the family would ever do anything like that. But then Joseph's giggling turns into crying. And it seems like Aunt Lily is having a tough time detaching her face from Joseph's belly. And then eventually she lets go, and it looks like there's some blood in his belly. And the sounds that Aunt Lily is making are not funny anymore. She reaches into her mouth, and she pulls out her dentures, and she says in a different voice that something is wrong. It's all the dentist's fault, that it felt like one of the dentures was sliding out of place, and she tried to stop it from falling out, and she accidentally bit the baby. And the baby is crying. And Elena is looking for the first aid kit, and Aunt Lily starts calling the dentist all kinds of really nasty Russian names. And Elena says that we have to take him to the emergency room. And I say, why to the emergency room? It's only a small cut. She says, you never know. And I tell her, if this was one of your relatives who bit the baby, would you still be taking him to the emergency room? And she says, my relatives don't bite babies. And I say, oh really? So we bicker for a while, and the baby is crying, and Aunt Lily, she says she wants to sue the dentist, and she's asking for a Russian yellow pages so that she can find the lawyer. And she's getting so agitated that I'm beginning to worry that I'm going to have to make 2 trips to the emergency room instead of 1. And I'm trying to reach Misha on the phone, and he's not picking up. Eventually, he picks up the phone, and he comes over, and he takes Aunt Lily away. And Joseph is still sobbing, and Elena is still determined to go to the emergency room. And I'm wondering, how am I going to explain to the nurse there how this wound came about? But then Misha calls from the car, and he says that Aunt Lily can't find the upper denture, and she thinks that maybe she left it back in the apartment. So can I look for it? So I looked around, and of all the places, I found it on top of the refrigerator. And I was going to call Misha, but Elena was standing right there, and she was holding Joseph. And Joseph noticed Aunt Lily's teeth, and he stopped crying, and he reached for them. So I rinsed it, and I let him hold it for a moment. And he looked perfectly happy. And I thought, if only it was this easy to make Elena happy. And then I realized that she's staring at those teeth in Joseph's hand. And I thought, well, maybe this is what it takes. Maybe this is the best chance I'm ever going to get to make up for all the sleepless nights and for these phone calls and for the pains of childbirth and for all the inconveniences of pregnancies, all these things that no flowers or diamonds will ever make up for. So I hesitated for a moment, but then I called Mish and I said, I'm sorry, I can't find it. And Joseph played with those teeth for a little while, but I think Elena understood that this trophy was hers, because after he went to bed, she put those teeth in a Ziploc bag and in a shoebox where she kept all kinds of trinkets and keepsakes that looked totally unimportant to me, but I'm sure all were very, very important to her. Thank you.